Good evening, good morrow, and good morning, everyone. My name is Mikael Moonstrung, and I am excited as always to be here, but more excited for who I have in the studio today. I would like to welcome the very unique, the very well hatted Blair Wilson, Psychonautic Gnostic, the TikTok Masonic educator. How are you doing, brother?
Doing all right, man. Doing
Well,
all right.
thank you for coming down. I understand that with the 5G going up everywhere, with the amount of
Oh
work it
yes.
takes to just sustain a household and a family, that being here is probably one of the last places you wanted to be, but we've stolen your time. So thank you. Thank you for being here. Now, for those of you who don't know, Psychonaut Agnostic, tell us a bit about yourself.
Well, I work in the mental health field as a qualified behavioral health care provider, which is a mouthful, I know. Um, Essentially, I work with therapists and I work within the school system with kids from kindergarten to seniors.
Wow. So that's got you. That has to be a very interesting field right now.
It is. It can be pretty tough from time to time, but it's rewarding as well.
Well, I'm
And
glad
I
that
have
we've.
to give good night lovin's to my child real quick.
Oh, no, no worries. That's most important.
Mwah. Say hi.
Hi. Hi. Good night.
Good night.
She's like, why did I just get told good night by a random stranger? What is this, Dad?
Oh, she doesn't meet strangers.
Hey, fair. Fair. Damn well.
Yes, yes. She is very into everybody.
Yeah, so God, that my son is the same way. He knows no stranger, no matter what we do. It's like, no, she's like, well, but I want to ask a question. It's like, you can't do that.
Yes, yes.
There's social convention. Well, so with being in that field and then looking at, some of those core values within the fraternity, hope, charity, fraternity. What let's talk about you and when you got involved with it within the fraternity. When did you start? When were you passed, raised, and turned through those satanic
Oh,
degrees?
it was 2015, I believe. 2015, 2016. Yeah, somewhere around there.
And what inspired you to go into the fraternity?
Well, I graduated high school in 2011 and I received the Masonic Scholarship from my high school science teacher is a Mason and he's actually my current worshipful master.
No shit.
Yes, and he chose me to receive the scholarship. And after that, I was like, huh, why did I get a Masonic scholarship? And I still don't really know why he chose me, but he did. And from there, I thought about it. I researched it a little bit more because up until then, I just knew the basics. I watched History Channel. I knew the conspiracies.
Which there
Watched
are so many.
film, National Treasure, things like that.
Okay,
And
man, National Treasure got me real. I straight up, I hate to admit it, but I was one of the, like, I would, when I started with the fraternity, I was like, when do I get my binoculars and the Codex
I,
cipher reading? Like,
yeah.
that was me.
And while I was in college, one of my high school friends, we were having a little party, getting together, having a good time, and he had a Masonic ring on. And I was like, "Hey, you're a Mason?" He's like, "Yeah." I talked to Stacy Rawls, our worshipful master up there. He's the science teacher. You remember him? I'm like, "Yeah, of course." And yeah, I was like, "Well, I'm going to reach out to him. I'm going to do it." And I asked him the questions. I popped the question, and
The big old question.
yeah, and went on from there.
Well, man, that's incredible. Especially you actually, this is cool. So, this is my favorite question to ask Masons in general is, what brought you in, and to hear a different story. To be honest, I don't. I've known about the Masonic scholarship. I know that every Grand Lodge effectively has a very similar program, but yet I'd never known anybody to receive it. So
Yeah,
that's awesome, especially to see, like, so you're an actual recipient before being within the fraternity of that initial foundational principle of charity.
yeah.
So when you looked at that and you began within the fraternity, let's talk about some of those initial foundational moments. What was the first? Obviously, we know the first degree. We know some of these especially, but what was your perception? What were some of the conceptions that you had in the beginning? Were they? What did you encounter after you started within?
I didn't really know what to expect. I mean, because I only knew the conspiracies.
Mhm.
And of course, they did the usual jokes about the goat. I heard the goat jokes, and
We
they
love a
told me to
goat.
wear a fresh pair of underwear. I was like, oh, well, I wonder what that means.
At least they
Uh,
set the expectation. I mean,
yes, yes. They had the good natured ribbing.
I feel like that's at the heart of a lot of again engagements is you need a little bit of fear, but you also need lots of humor. You need lots of
Yes,
laughter. You need lots of engagement. Did you ever feel like you ran into any walls? Any parts that were you nervous when you started?
absolutely. Very nervous, especially from the first moments. You know what
Oh,
I mean.
absolutely. I mean,
The
hell.
man who did the man who did my EA, he was very loud and boisterous, very theatric with it. It was very
As the
solemn
best
and
are. We
surreal.
like them vocal here.
Yes, yes,
So let's talk about how you've evolved. So 2015, 16, that was about when I was graduating high school. When
really.
that I mean that's the we'll pass up. But yeah, no, actually 2015 I started I joined the lodge in 2018 into 2019, if I can recall, maybe. One of those places. It's been a bit. I've had two kids since then, so it's yeah, brain cells depreciating. But when
Yes.
you moved into that, what's driven you into TikTok and educating in particular on TikTok, or showing that badge? I know that that's not the entirety of your channel, but you are.
Right. Yes.
Many people know you when they first searched Freemason. Why there?
Uh, so I started TikTok when the quarantine first hit last year,
Hmm.
or has it been longer than that? Oh my God, I can't even remember. It's all a blur.
I mean, it
But
started. It first started. Yeah, God.
yeah, yeah. COVID hit, and I got laid off from my job,
Mm.
so I had nothing to do. I had to do something with my time.
Right.
And I found TikTok. I'm like, you know what? I put it off for a while because I'm like, oh, it's just a teenage girl app, right? I mean, it's just that's all it is.
I mean, I thought I had the same thing. Say thought the same
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. And I'm like, well, I'll give it a shot. And I started out doing movie reviews and just random shit. And eventually, I'm like, you know what? I wonder if there's any brothers on this app. So I made a few Freemason TikToks, and mostly I got hit with the conspiracies. People came out of the woodwork just to hate and bash. And then I started to go into the debunking stuff. And there were a few brothers at that time, but not many. And then it just kind of blew up.
I'll admit, I remember when you hopped on I was doing a Masonic live, and there were it was I was just or Masonic live. I was doodling some Masonic artwork or something, and you and brother Tyler Harper Crates, you guys came on and we
Yes.
started this dialogue, this conversation. I was like, holy shit, they're out there.
Yeah.
I'm not alone. And then it started just in general a conversation. I'm like, this is the coolest shit I've experienced. It's like my lodge outside of my lodge. I get to be a traveling man from home. Like, I mean, this has been the coolest shit. You thrilled the hell out of me. Like, oh, I know that name. It wasn't just some random like user. Like, that's the dude who I subscribed like
Yeah.
it was big. I mean, in my world, even still currently, you're very much a celebrity now. Especially, I'm gonna break into what I like, especially for those viewers, longer time viewers of this channel. I love the esoteric. I love the spiritual. I love
Oh,
the
yes.
religious and the magical. I'm a profound, active pagan practitioner, ritualistic, and blah blah blah. But you, my good buddy, you have been doing a few series lately that have been on some of the more non-canonical tales, and as well
Yes.
this shit's awesome. What's called you to take in this tangent?
Well, I was raised up Southern Baptist. I was very closed off. My parents were very conservative. I was just, I was one of those kind of bigoted people. I was. And then I started college and I took some world religion classes
Hmm.
and I took some philosophy classes. And that just opened my mind up. And I'm like, wait, this is not the only way to view the world. And I'm not necessarily right about all of this stuff. And then I joined the lodge and started digging into Freemasonry more, and that also broadened my horizons. And I'm like, you know what? Forget this bigoted hate stuff. I'm going to love everyone no matter what they believe, what their politics are. Forget it all.
I like that. I mean, that's definitely very much within the fraternity's kind of like teachings, right? You know, we
Yeah.
don't bring politics, we don't bring religion. You focus on the core of who an individual is. So when you started, as in I've seen Conspiracy Carl's video. He broke into the inner sanctum,
Yes,
he violated it, and in
he
such
did.
place, I glimpsed at your lovely bookshelf, and I saw some of those things that were blasphemous texts, and so
Mhm.
that definitely sets me on a certain space. I could tell you've done some research on not only Kabbalah, original Jewish language and etymology of words, but as well as tarot. And all of these places, how would you describe your experience with them?
I'm very novice. I mean, to be honest, I love it. It's very rich in history and symbolism, and I eat that stuff up, but I am by no means an expert.
When you look at Freemasonry in particular, now as the research goes, because I love that's where a lot of kind of that expansive thought goes, or is stimulated from. You talk about the second degree, those initial foundational teachings. You talk about the things we're encouraged to go through and to do, to look at the world with. And then you take what is a very symbolic and religious system that the individual develops. How has Freemasonry shifted or shaped your individual truth, your unique path, not the one that sticks under any title under than you?
It's just inspired me to keep seeking knowledge and to never go, well, okay, I know it all now, because I don't think I'll ever reach that. So just keep learning.
I like that. I like that a lot. Okay, so you've been now a Freemason through what I would call some of probably the most volatile times within the last 50 years. I would stretch back a little bit further, but we enter into some deeply social controversial times. So I'm not gonna worry about that. Last 50 years or so, the Freemasonry was really on a bit of a decline and a dip down. When you look at the fraternity now, how do you see it going and expect it to go in the next 5, 10 years?
I see it picking up some steam, honestly. I mean, when I first joined, I mean, there's still not a whole lot of people in my lodge. It's a
Mhm.
small country lodge, but we have,
What
ever
is your
since I
lodge? I meant to
joined.
ask that. That's
Oh,
base. Why did I not check that? Whoa, who is your lodge? I'm sorry.
It's Holland Lodge number 158 in Quitman, Arkansas.
Hell yes. Let me write that down.
Yeah, out here in the sticks. I mean, it is country.
I mean, hey, I'm from Neosho, Missouri. Now I'm
Yeah,
not
yeah,
currently. We're resting in Colorado, but I mean, I am familiar with it. Yeah, I got you.
yeah. My brother lives in Springfield, actually.
Oh shit. Okay. Well, yeah.
Yeah,
Then we from familiar stomping grounds, good
yeah,
sir.
yeah. Indeed.
Oh, so I apologize. I didn't mean
Oh,
to interrupt. Going back to the fraternity in the next 10 years, building and evolving.
oh, right. I've
When
seen
you
it picking up steam. I mean, there's people always asking questions to all these brothers on TikTok, and I'm like, hey, people are interested. It's just that the fraternity has been so secretive,
Mhm.
and I feel like that's turned some people off.
Yeah,
But when we actually get out there and be like, hey, this is who we are,
this is what
people
we do.
start asking questions. Yeah.
So, what kind of Mason are you? And I say it because said, this is who we are. A lot of people have very different, they're different kinds of Masons. They're different. They have different
True.
views that they involve. But when we look at you and your story, how have you taken to living the fraternity? How do you share that?
Very esoteric minded. That's my kind of jam.
When you look at that within your lodge and with other spaces, do you ever feel like you run into let me ask not a like loaded question. Have you ever experienced any resistance to some of those esoteric or maybe extended thoughts that come out in research?
Not really. Um, like my lodge, we don't even have an educational officer. We don't have Masonic education at my lodge. But I brought it up at the last state. I'm like, hey, can we get some education in here?
Can we do
And
some
my
stuff?
lodge was like, yeah, take it, do it, do it. I'm like, okay, I'll do it.
You know what? That doesn't like typify what I would say is like a worshipful's response. We'll do it. We'll do it. That's a great idea. I second
Yeah,
that.
Yeah.
Take the charge. How have you taken up that charge within your lodge?
I haven't yet. I am currently working on it. I'm working with another brother right now who is also esoteric minded, and we're trying to come up with like a first lesson right now. Like, what are we going to start with? We've been batting around some ideas.
I would like to, if it's again at your leisure. I put it up on TikTok there a bit back. We didn't get a whole lot of traction. However, I have a newsletter. I'll send it to you for free because inevitably it was supposed to be just charitable. But I can definitely see that you're active and charitable enough to take on the charge of being a lodge education officer,
Yes.
even voluntarily. Like you are a glutton for punishment, my good sir. But
Yes. Right.
this is the right kind of masochism we want. We want that level of self abuse. And anyway, and it's just I literally took with a quill and I just scribbled varying Masonic things that hopefully I'd like to share that with you just for one, get your feedback, but two, if it could contribute or help to anything, that would be awesome.
Will do. Yeah, for sure.
So next question, coming into the realm of the future. What do you think we're going to run into on a resistance level?
Ooh, I have also been noticing anti-Masonic sentiments popping up everywhere. I frequent Reddit,
Mm-hmm.
and I look at the conspiracy subreddit, and Mason, 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 Mason. The Masons are they're behind COVID, or Masons are going to force us all to get the vaccine. All kinds of things. So, and then the Vancouver Lodge is burning.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah,
That's
I mean,
unfortunate.
being in a small town, we don't have to worry about it as much.
Mm-hmm.
But I worry about my brothers in like these bigger lodges, bigger cities.
Especially even in when you look at some of the international lodges where we've got so much volatility, we have so much rapid change in our world. Well, then, what defenses do you think the fraternity has against misinformation and against against the rise of conspiracies? It's something we've dealt with since our beginning, but what do you think we can use, or what can we as individual Masons do to defend against that?
I think the best thing we can do is be more accessible, a little more open. Now, of course, we keep our landmarks, we keep our secrets that we need to keep.
Right.
But everything else, I think we need to open our doors a bit more.
I like
so that
that.
people know, hey, there's nothing going on here. It's good.
When you start on an individual level, because when I began within the fraternity, it was really hard for me to know what do I say and what do I not say. And obviously, again, to all those watching, neither one of us speak for any Grand Lodge or our lodge.
No.
This is a conversation. This is a fraternal chat. But what can we? I lost my train of thought. I hate when that happens. When we're looking at. Oh God, it was a good question. I swear, it was. What were we just talking about? What was that thing?
I believe you were going to go somewhere with the secrets and how open.
Bless you, good sir. I'm going to just blame that on the color of my hair. No, so how do I know? How do I know as a Mason, for those other Masons that are watching, especially because even older ones, younger ones, how do I know what I can say and I can't say? Or what do you think would be a good place for me to start in understanding that?
I have ran into that myself, and really, I did a Reddit post and I did a TikTok post, and I just kind of gauged the room. I'm like, hey, what do most brothers say?
Mm-hmm.
And I got a pretty consistent answer that parts of the ritual, anything that's not written down, modes of recognition, things like that, are to be kept secret.
I mean,
and of course, that varies
fair.
from jurisdiction to jurisdiction.
That's right.
I mean, there's some lodges that are more secretive than I would be.
I know that's actually, I found it really interesting at times. There were things that when I started within the fraternity, I found what I would say blatantly spoken about on TikTok or on social media. And I was like, well, shit. I really thought, at least I had an idea that was maybe secretive, maybe that fell within the parts points, but I don't, it's something that I regularly struggle with. I've heard some people say, well, if it's in plain English, then not diddle we could really do about it. So, if it's not ciphered, don't worry about it.
Right. Yeah. The master of my lodge, like he told me that anything written, you can share with anybody. And like we we get these pamphlets after each degree that has information in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like mine has the working tools in it. And I did a couple videos early on of the working tools.
Mm-hmm.
And I had brothers coming at me like, no, secret, you're breaking your obligation. I'm like, no, this is written in this pamphlet here. And my worshipful master said, anything in this book you can share with anybody. And they're like, no, that's not taught in my lodge.
That's not how it is here. That's a really, so how do you feel like we find amity? How do you feel like we find amity in dealing with some of these differences? Because don't get me wrong, I'm a part of several like Masonic Facebook groups. This is one of the least Masonic places at times. Holy
Yes.
worshipful master. Like,
yes.
It's like we're talking about some on mail. I'm like, go ahead, give me your lodge number, brother. I need to have a conversation with your secretary.
Yes.
Like, how do you feel like we find amity?
I don't know that we do. I mean, we can speak our piece, and that's about all we can do. They can either disagree with us or not. They might agree, they might not.
That's fine. Or that's fine. That's fair. That's
I mean,
fine.
if you're not a grand master or something, you can't,
You can't very well change it. I'll definitely admit, like when it comes to some of the politics which can move through, because it does exist, whether we like it or not. Politics are everywhere. They exist where people gather. And there are politics within the Grand Lodge. There are things that definitely, especially with there are some states that they're very bound by what I would call archaic process. And they have yet to change. They have yet to move to things that I'm like, that's impressive.
Yeah, I often think that way when it comes to Prince Hall and Masons who are part of the LGBT community.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's nothing that says, if you're gay, you can't be a Mason. That's not in there. But then again,
so yeah, let's tackle that question. And I love that you gave me the opportunity to dip into some lovely controversial waters.
Yes.
So because these are ones that I like when I start, like, okay, well, I have my own opinions about it, but with this evolving cultural shift and generation of, you really are who you choose to be, who you create. You are this persona and identity. When it comes to the lodge, which is bound on a certain level, outward perspective, we're all builders. And the idea is to be able to create harmony, structure. And this is done by looking and analyzing what we can observe, detect, hear, and measure for each stone that comes into that place that could be met as an archive. How do you think that's going to, how do you think the fraternity is going to deal with that when it comes to people who have decided things that other brethren in other spaces at one point in time could objectively say yay or nay about?
I think it will progress slowly but surely. I mean, things have continued to change. For instance, the United Grand Lodge of England, just recently during Pride Month, they posted that they support it.
Really? I wasn't aware of that. That's awesome.
Their Facebook page. Yeah.
Fuck yeah. That's fantastic.
The comment section though.
Woo. There's the other side of the coin, right? Like there's one side of like, yeah, and then it's like, look at how everybody. Yeah. That's really interesting. Okay, now I've got a whole ass other Google I need to go check out. So thank you for that. Oh, yes. That's okay. So let's roll it to, your home lodge. How do you think your lodge would receive it? If a let's just say a trans individual came in, and we're going to make the assumptions as they are, where this is all operating upon the base foundational principles of fraternity. We are not assuming anything. We're just under a hypothetical. But if an individual who chose and identified in their own space to be male and man, and they approached your lodge in such a space, do you think they would be met with any kind of resistance?
Absolutely. I mean, there are a couple of brothers in lodge who would probably be open to it, but their voices might get drowned out.
Yeah. I mean, there's a certain level where it definitely pulls back to some of our precepts around cowens or eavesdroppers, and those original precepts that we have established. You must be a male, you must be able-bodied, you have a good, you be able to support your family, no felonies, blah blah blah, the things which constitute the requirements of a Mason. I've had a lot of brethren be like, well, it inherently violates some of those original law, or not law, there's a word that I can't remember. It's not landmarks, but just, I guess I would say, ancient ideology prescribed to very revolutionary times. So it's a hard question. Do you think that's something that, when it comes to people who are very interested in the fraternity, do you think that's something that what would you advise them to do? Let's start there. They've been met with resistance, or
I think there should be a dialogue before deciding anything. There should be a discussion. Brothers who are dissenting opinions should voice their opinions and say why they feel this way, and come to a conclusion.
mm-hmm. Where do you think the answer to that lies? The answer to that, in that inherent question, when we look at the fraternity, do you believe that it's, the answer to that is bound between things that have been written, or do you think that it will be found in things that are to be written?
I'm of the mind that change is usually good.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a lot of brothers who are very steadfast in, no, this is our history, this is how it's written, it can't change. But it can. It has been numerous times. I mean, if you look back at the degrees, even, there were only 2. And then the master degree was added. And then
you gotta be careful. People freak out about that one. A lot of I've got some people who are like, what do you mean? Open a book.
Yeah. It can change, and has, and it will continue to do so. Just like the Constitution. It can be amended.
Amen. Amen to that. So speaking of amendments, do you look at the fraternity and see that there's any immediate amendments that you would make if you were the one most high goat?
Ooh, if I was the high goat, what would I do? Prince Hall recognition would be up there. I am in a jurisdiction that does not recognize Prince Hall.
That is
one of the few.
Strange thing. That is such a
I know.
strange
I
thing.
know.
I think New
Because it's
Mexico
almost
is like that
universally
too.
accepted now. It's almost universal. But there are holdouts.
Where do you think that emanates from? I mean, I'm just gonna be honest, because like I always think that's really funny when you have certain moral questions with a fraternal member who's bound in the same moral and scholar. Like, how are we having certain conversations? How are we like what?
Right. I don't know. I mean, I haven't been to one of those powwows, where they discuss those things. So I don't know exactly how it goes, or how the tides turn.
How do you think we could start that change? Right. Each one of us is a brethren. Each one of us has a voice and bears the same badge of honor, regardless of jurisdiction, regardless of place. We are bound by a common and collective voice, which is fraternity, hope, and charity. When we look at this, how would you suggest, or how do you think we cause a change?
Conversation is key.
Conversation is key.
What about that? I mean, you're not going to force someone to change their mind.
No.
But you may persuade them with good arguments and evidence.
I think we should focus on those 2 points you just made there, right? Conspiracy Carl, my main master venom. These are 2 things when it comes to conversation and dialogue, especially on the TikToks, on the internet. Evidence. What was the other thing you said? Oh, conversation. Communication. Yes. Bingo. That one. Okay, so let's talk then when we're evolving change, and within the fraternity, within these individual places and spaces. The 3 degrees are what I would say some would find limiting. There's a lot of places where the Blue Lodge does not get the focus or recognition that I definitely feel like it deserves. There's so much in it, like everything else, the appendant bodies. If you were talking to yourself back in your first degree, you rolled back to that point, you were your own guide. What would you give to you to highlight what would you give to you? Let's just start there. What would you tell yourself?
Like, what would I do differently, perhaps? Or
Yeah, I mean, in this space, like, if you had the opportunity to go back in time and give to yourself a word of advice, one way or the other, about the fraternity, about things you would engage coming to this point in your life, what would you say?
hmm, I don't know if I would change anything.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I did enough research that I knew that I shouldn't be rushing into things.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are a lot of brothers who say I rushed into this. I joined like 3 appendant bodies at once, and and I regret that, and I wish I hadn't done it. So I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to do that. I'm going to spend some years in Blue Lodge, go through the chairs, and then I'll think about appendant bodies.
Have you currently gone through the chairs at all, or not gone through? Like, are you currently sitting in any chair?
Yes, I'm junior deacon right now. So when I first started, I was regular, and then I had to drop out for like 2 years because I had a night job.
Mm-hmm. It
So
happens inevitably. Like,
yeah, so we do the progression thing. So I was kind of knocked out of rotation, so I'm back at junior deacon. So I've served as junior deacon and chaplain.
oh wow, that's interesting. So you started as chaplain.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
they say, because that in my lodge, they're like, you don't get to be chaplain until you've done everything. Then you get to be the big boy. Like
That's
chaplain
Tyler
sits.
for us.
Really?
Yeah.
That's so funny. That's so funny. But I feel it. I like that. I mean, I like that there's it's certainly this revolving difference. There's this change. Oh, goodness gracious. Mute thy phone. Shame. For shame. So let me roll through my questions, make sure we tap onto the big ones here. So let's talk about you. All right. Blair, not brother Blair Wilson, not just the individual. In your life and your goals and your aspirations, you've got 3 wishes from a genie by which, usual genie rules apply. What do you do with them?
Hmm. Hmm. 3 wishes. Okay. Knowledge, comfort, world peace. As corny as that sounds,
All right.
as
All right.
cliche Miss America over here.
You know what, Boo? It works, and I'm about it. But let's talk about that third one because I feel the first 2 infinitely and immensely. But let's talk about world peace. What does that look like to you? What does world peace mean?
John Lennon's vision, man.
Yes.
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I don't think it's achievable. It's one of those unrealistic goals because there's always going to be differences between people, and it's always going to cause a fight.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's talk about some, we're world benders here, right? We're a part of a fraternity, which apparently, according to the conspiracy theorist, is a part of the highest order of control. So, you've got all the levers, my good sir, even the wrong ones, Kronk. Which ones would you pull, presuming you could force change? Obviously, the Thanos approach is not necessarily what we're going for, but what does your perfect world look like in the sense that, if it is, what is world peace? Your genie's granted your wish. What does the world that you've woken up to look like?
What?
Looks like we're all stoners.
Amen. That was a good ass answer. Amen. I'm from Colorado. That was a right answer.
Yeah, apparently.
Apparently.
That is my partner.
Mhm. That is the great behind the good.
Yes. So I would say I don't want no, new world order where everyone's the same. I don't want that. I don't want that. I would not. I would not be like, oh, one religion, one political party. No, I would say just cherish your differences and live in peace, coexist.
Mm-hmm.
I would not. I don't want a bland black and white.
What are the punishable offenses of this world? Or is it just one whereby we've facilitated mental manipulation? Everybody is just good. It's utopian. Or is this one that, in this world, is it bound by a certain level? Like, how would you punish the wrongdoers? And again, in this all purely hypothetical, what obligations do you bind them to?
That is a tough question, my friend. Huh.
I mean, obviously, murder, rape,
I mean, yes, yes. Harming others in any way would be punishable. But punishable how? If you punish them with murder or torture, you are breaking the rules yourself. So, perhaps just removed from society in some way until they change their ways.
All right. So effectively, it becomes it's like a forced personal journey, so to speak. Like, yeah, you get to think about
Yeah.
it. How long
Yeah.
until you figure it the fuck out?
Give them a doobie and let them stew on it.
Man, smack about it. You really mad, bro?
Yeah.
Like, really? Just
Chill. Take a chill pill,
Yeah,
man.
man, welcome to
You're
Smoke
doing wrong
Lounge.
things.
Absolutely. Okay, so speaking of the doobies, speaking of the particular place, what's your experience with marijuana or weed and its view within Freemason's eyes? This is actually a question I had earlier, or not question, like came to my mind. I was like, I've never thought about this because I've drank at lodge, I've smoked at lodge. In regards, you're having fraternal communion, engaging what space. Arkansas, I don't believe it's regularly legal. It's medically, right?
Yeah, it's medically legal. Yeah.
Okay. Well, but yeah, just in general, if you don't mind me, don't mind me asking.
I have no problem with it. I don't see it as like a moral issue. I really don't. Uh, and I've never seen weed in particular as like this boogeyman drug.
No devil's lettuce for you.
Yes, no. I mean, the statistics don't lie. The science doesn't lie that alcohol is like 10 times worse. Nicotine, just there are so many worse things you could do.
Amen. Amen. So you're at lodge, right? And again, we're under the presumption we're in the imaginary state of Arkansas, and it's legal there. You've got a brother who sparks up at lodge outside. Would that bring up any issue? Would that bring up any space where you feel like? How do you feel like your other brethren in lodge would respond to that?
I don't believe they'd care, honestly.
Yeah.
As conservative as a lot of them are, I don't think they would mind weed. I mean, the tides are changing.
I like that. This is comforting news to me.
Yeah.
As a Colorado resident, that's mean, that's all I will say. Bad time to have to cough, but I suppose it also fits well. All right, now let's deal and delve into what I would say is the current standing and resting point for you. What do you want to do in the future when it comes to your dreams, your visions, not just for the fraternity, but for you personally, for your life? What are the things that, if we were to look at not just this channel, how could we support you? How could your TikTok digital family find and support you?
I mean, I would like to eventually go back and get my master's.
Yeah.
That's
what's your there's a thing there, degree? Yeah. In what?
Psychology.
Oh.
Yes. To become a therapist, get licensed.
When you take the purpose and aspect of therapy on an individual level, what's a change that we can personally make to incorporate, to get to a better mental health? Because mental health matters. That is I think one of the lead contributors to a lot of problems in our country and our world. What's something that I or any individual could do to help improve their mental health?
Break the stigma, for one. Have empathy for each other. Recognize that mental health is a real thing. It's not something you can just like snap your fingers and get over. So education is key, educating the public on what mental illness means. I think that's the first step.
What does mental illness mean?
A whole host of things. A chemical imbalance in the brain, trauma. It depends.
If I felt like I was starting to, tumble or roll into that place, what should I do? What's the first thing that I should do to recognize
that? Seek help. First of all, I would recommend that you start talking with family and friends to comfort you in your time of need, and then look for a therapist. Find some way you can get that help, because there are some things that you can say to a therapist who is disconnected from you that you can't say to your friends and family.
Yeah, no, that's really true. All right, so playing the patient, so to speak, I am absolutely petrified. We've got a lot of our audience on TikTok, our audience on YouTube in general. Our audience as content creators on any level is going to be an evolving amount of younger and younger people who are becoming exposed and immersed to a new world. I'm afraid to go to my family with these issues, and I don't have the money to, to get therapy, to do these things. What should I do then?
It gets sticky there. There are a lot of good resources at your local library online that you can use. Now, it's not 100%, it's not foolproof. I mean, you can find a lot of misinformation out there, obviously. But if you have nothing else, that's going to be your last hope. If you can't afford a therapist, if you can't talk to your friends, family, that's what you have. Or online communities, even.
That's true. There's a lot of power to be able to cling into that. I mean, hell, we're here right now, online in the digital, getting to have a conversation, or rather across the country. We're getting to have an incredible conversation. So I think that defines it well. Remember, you're never alone. I think that is encapsulated well. Get help. Ask questions. Don't let the world get too dark.
And whatever you're going through, someone else has experienced it.
Holy shit, is that not true? If TikTok has told me anything, it's that I'm not that special.
Yes.
Including my suffering, and
Nothing
including my
new under
perceived
the
issues.
sun.
You're 100% correct. All right, Blair, let's do this. Let's play a game. I like this one. You have woken up in a fictitious world, entirely fictitious, but you are positioned amongst the top. You've woken up on the Mount Olympus, on the proverbial Garden of the Gods. You are not mortal, you are not man, but you are one of those who's been entrusted to guard, to guide, to lead, to do something for the collective around you. Who are you? And what do you do for humanity?
Ooh. Okay, I'm not a man, I'm not God, but I have some kind of supernatural powers.
Yes, you could be, if you want to be an angel, want to be a demon, you want to look at it as you are a demigod, you are one of the gods, if we're operating under a particular pantheon or paganistic belief. Or if under the mono, you're one of the servants, you are one of the seraphim, one of the Gregori, whoever you may be called, whatever your life paints you to be. What's your story tell? Who are you?
If I could wave a magic wand, I think the single thing that could help the most would be to somehow give everyone the same level of empathy. Because at least then you could understand where your neighbor is coming from when they believe differently. You can empathize and be like, oh, well, I understand why you feel that way. And so I'm not going to harm you. I'm not going to talk crap about you because I see where you are. I see where you've been and I understand.
So Blair Wilson is the angel of empathy, bringer and carrier of a universal emotion, a universal compassion to all of the residents and citizens, denizens of this unfortunately fictitious world that we live in, but one that we're building, that we're creating actively in this live D&D game we call life.
Yeah.
What's your tool? What is in your hand? How do you achieve this work?
Oh, man. What is in my hand? A book.
Good answer.
Now,
Damn, good answer.
A book of some kind. Knowledge is power.
Book of law. Book of the book. It's the book. La livra.
Yes.
La biblioteca. That's not it, but I like that. That's a good answer. That's a good. All right. So you've just left your divine place of residence. Where's the first place you go? To our world right now.
A nice, quiet, secluded place.
He's like, nowhere. Somewhere I don't have to deal with people.
I'm done dealing with the people. I'm going to go to a nice little enclave. Perhaps it's a library, even Beauty and the Beast style. That big library. Yes, the Library of Alexandria.
Oh, what a beautiful place!
Yes.
What a beautiful place. What do you feel? Who do you feel will be your antithesis? You know, your shadow in this fictitious world. Who will be there at your every step to either be one ahead or one behind, but always there?
Hmm. Like my arch nemesis.
Your arch nemesis. Yes, we must all have them. Conspiracy Carl to some.
Greed.
Ooh, another A plus question. Answer. Who does greed look like?
Oh, I don't know. I just get I get that comic book villain with the monocle and the money bags, like the Monopoly guy.
Hell yeah, capitalism. Welcome to America, land of the it's mine.
All for me and none for you.
Oh, good answers, Psychonautic, Gnostic. I can tell that you're doing very well with being put on the spot. This is fantastic. This feeds my headcanon beautifully. And what's your weakness? Every great hero has one. Every divinity a cripple. You know, this linchpin. What's yours?
Weakness to empathy. Oh man. Oh, that's the hardest one yet. You've stumped me.
Maybe it's good that those viewers don't know the weakness to our superpower. No, there is no kryptonite. There's none. It does not exist.
Well, my own humanity in general.
The double side of empathy is that you must feel. That sucks.
Yes.
Ooh, I like that though. I like that.
Because I don't know. We can't be perfect. We can't.
Mm-mm.
Like, as much as I'd want to be this demigod who can affect change like this, I can't be. Never will.
Only while you hold the book. But if you hold the book, how can you hold what's good and close to you? I feel.
Very good. Yeah.
Interesting. I have a whole ass visualization of some cool comics I want to do. I've got some TikTok artists out here that I'm going to bring up. We're going to write this Masonic TikTok Lodge #1 comic. I think it's going to be exciting. Oh, this would be cool. These are really good answers. These are really good answers, and I'm trying to figure out if I can take it a step further. But I don't
Probably
know.
can't.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you.
You
Your
can always go
confidence.
deeper. You can always go deeper.
Well, what does deeper to you look like when it comes to the fraternity, when it comes to the individual? You know, I'm less worried about Freemasonry and I'm more looking at you. When it comes to deeper, when you've asked questions in your life, when you've had experiences, what has led you deeper into them in a world of very shallow sensory stimulation and instant gratification? What has led you deeper into yourself?
Speaking to others with differences of culture and experiences than I have had. Because you don't want to be stuck in an echo chamber. I mean, you don't.
I mean, yeah, I like the sound of my own voice enough to have a podcast and interview people, but
Yes.
not enough for that to be my music. I like that.
Because you can't have empathy for others unless you learn about them.
Running back to our superhero, what made him the way he is? How did he become this guardian and keeper of emotion, of empathy and compassion? Why did God, all, the divinity, the big G, why did he choose him?
Damn. Because humankind couldn't do it on their own.
That's 3 A's. You're out. You're striking out. That's too good. Three, good of answers. Damn. We can't do it on our own. We need help. And I think that's really true, especially about right now in our world. I think for a great many people, it's that we do need help. Maybe our egos have inflated just a little bit, just enough to lend us into arrogance versus confidence.
Subdue those passions.
Well said. Well said. I am enjoying this. Subdue those passions. Surround yourself with that which is impermanent. No, permanent. I can't get my words wrong. Surround yourself with this. See, I start out all dramatic. I would be so great if I could edit this shit appropriately. But no, I like it better in the raw, in the unfiltered. Fuck, whatever. A Psychonautic Gnostic, I'm going to offer you a rare chance and opportunity, not one that I would ask you to, be kind. Do you have any questions for me?
Questions for you.
I invited you here, so I'm putting you on the spot once
Okay,
more.
all
You
right.
don't have to.
So, what is your unique flavor of religion?
Ooh. I'm a practitioner
I've been
of.
curious because I
That's
see the videos and I'm like, well, that doesn't necessarily mean you know exactly what he believes just because you see some videos.
That's a good question. That's a really good question. So I had a woman in my life whose name was Brenda, or she still is. I could get to say that. Who is Garnet Earth and Wing. She was a crone, a keeper of the shadows. She's just, she's like my mom. She took care of me at a time that, I really needed it. And she taught me, it helped me to see the power in living for me. And it's not living for me, but living for like my highest ideal or goal. And so the phrase that I coined was Brendaism. And inherently it's like you could just take your name and throw ism on the end of it. It's youism. And in this case, Brenda is her name. Brendaism emanates from this idea that your faith is what works best with you. I would say I'm an eclectic witch, but there are parts of my practice which really emanate from my monotheistic upbringing in Christianity. So I mean, a witch may not necessarily, that name may not work for people, but what does work for me is I'm a meist. I believe that the best that I can do is try to understand, but that understanding can only emanate from me and the experiences that I have. Now, inherently, that means I seek experience. I try to go into the shit of it. I want to ask questions that make people think. I want to experience things that make me think. I'm a long time, over a decade now, of practice in varying pagan rituals, in varying systems of psychoactive transformation, all of which done to increase experience. And on side that, I've got 3 children, so I am an exhausted father and
Yes.
a proud husband. These are things that for most people you could relate to. Drugs, God, exhaustion and delirium are things that they'll put shit in perspective for you. Being a dad, as you well know,
Absolutely.
it's the fucking world, man. There's nothing greater. There's no greater purpose than to be a father. And this is for me, for you. I mean, I can't speak for you, but I would assume, because of my space, that there's nothing greater. So
I think
that'd be what I am.
Yes. All right.
Well, bless you. That was a good question. You stroked my ego nicely, good friend.
Fantastic.
All right, now I've got a question for Conspiracy Carl. Calling a little bit of the DID. So when we look at conspiracies, when we look at some of the most radical shit out there, what is the weirdest shit you've heard? What is the weirdest shit you've seen? Anything that somebody's given to you that you haven't been able to dispute or refute? Conspiracy Carl, what's your deal?
Oh, well, all them Freemasons, they drink the blood of babies. That's for sure.
Only on Wednesdays.
No. Thursdays too. I've seen it.
Thirsty Thursdays. Seen it, Will. Seen it. We don't have windows in lodge.
Oh, this one did. I swear it did.
Must have been the Windows operating system of your digital nightmare. What are you talking about?
Does the adrenochrome taste delicious?
It tastes better when you're riding on top of the goat.
Some adrenochrome with a nice Chianti.
Oh, bravo. Hey, actually, that segues well. You, my good sir, are a lover of theater. How does
Yes,
your how did your because that I believe did your tickets already go off for your the 11 stories? I'm
they
pretty sure
did. Yes,
I
they are finished.
if it needs so have you has that gone off yet? Has it how did it
Yes,
go if it did?
it has ran.
Oh, exciting. What was how was the turnout? How did that pan? And then likewise, what are the future goals for the
Mhm.
theater?
Not a very good turnout,
That's unfortunate. I'm sorry.
but we had a good time, and that's the main thing. I mean, community theater doesn't really make, it's not about making money in general.
Yeah.
It's just, it's for the
It,
love of.
it's for the love of theater. For the love of theater. Well, why do you love theater? What I mean, is that just something you've done for, what brought
Well,
you there?
so I struggled a lot with social anxiety. You wouldn't think it, would you?
No, to be honest, no. Actually, I mean, like being entirely honest, when you speak on TikTok, when you engage in such a space, I would thought you have done it your entire life.
I struggle with it hardcore, like even to the point where it's hard for me to go into a store and buy things because I'm like, ooh, anxiety. And
Same.
theater helped me a lot with that. It's weird, but I just decided one day, hey, I'm going to do this high school play. I'm going to face my fear. And when I get on stage or TikTok, I don't have that fear.
I applaud the method. You really go straight into the shit of it. That's far greater than I take when it comes to like my social anxieties. I hate people enough
Yes.
to the point that when it comes like I was so grateful for the cultural shift that was represented by coronavirus. Don't get me wrong, like I love my people. I love the cool people. I love the people who are worth liking. But it's all the others. It's the majority, the masses, which I have a tendency not to groove so well. I lock up. So when things changed, I was like, yes, introvert satisfied. But you took the opposite approach. You really dove into it. How old were you when you started that?
Uh, ooh, it was like junior or senior year of high school that I
So
finally
peak
did that.
adolescent.
Yes.
What did you run into when you started that? I mean, was it easy? How did you overcome the fear of like
No,
stepping into the light? Because that's the part I can't get past.
maybe it's sort of a method actor thing. Like if I'm on stage playing another person, I'm not me anymore. I'm not feeling Blair's anxiety. I'm feeling what this character is feeling.
I like that. So it's almost like going into the DID, and it's a bit of like inherently or DID. Yeah, is that it? Dis Dissociative identity disorder. Yeah, that
Yeah.
inherently you're clinging into a different space. What's been the favorite role that you've played? And by favorite, I mean let's look at two aspects. One, I was going to say most comfortable, I mean that you could just do easiest. But likewise, I would say one that brought you the most change, healing, or internal dialogue between you and this character.
Ooh, good question. Most comfortable I played. It's gonna sound weird, but I played this writer who was also a coke addict, and it was it worked for me. It was comfortable. I could just kind of go crazy and be weird.
It gave you that
But
ability to like hyper into the one side, but at the same time,
right,
I feel it.
it was the conspiracy persona sort of. I was just bouncing around saying crazy things. It was fun.
What about
It was
monkey?
funny. Yes, yes. a lot of sniffing. And the most challenging, I did the normal heart. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
I'm not
It's a
particularly.
play about the AIDS epidemic
Oh wow.
from
You
the
really
perspective.
like emotional pieces. I'm starting to
Yeah,
sense a trend.
I do. I do. That was really challenging. I played three different characters. One was a bigoted guy, the other was someone who was dying of AIDS, and the other was a flamboyant gay man. And I played all three of those, and it was weird. It was tough.
Yeah.
Just switching between those characters was tough.
I mean that you've got three really polarizing
Yes.
forms. I mean that had to. So are you dealing with different costume changes or is this all internal?
Oh yes. Costume changes, the whole 9 yards. Voice changes.
Wow. So do you feel what I mean did was do you feel like that was therapeutic? Inherently
Yeah,
going into that difficult change and switch.
absolutely. Yeah. It was therapeutic.
Are there any moments in time in your active everyday life where you've had to make similar like dramatic shifts or changes?
Hmm. Hmm. Somewhat. Um, I put on kind of a different face with family.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, my more conservative, more narrow-minded family members. I don't exactly. I don't take on their views or anything.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very quiet. I'm reserved.
You're
I
very
subdue
considerate
myself.
of their views.
I don't want to cause a scene.
That's
Sometimes I do.
very kind of
Sometimes I
you.
break. Sometimes it happens. Sometimes I let something slip. I'm like, actually, go into something, and they're just like, "Oh, you filthy."
Damn Freemasons ruling the world.
Yes.
What would you describe as, I mean, okay, so what agitates your spirit enough to make you kind of break that social, like, I know for me, it's difficult to say shit to anybody. So if I rose to a point of like speaking up, usually there was something that triggered it. For you, what do you find to, kind of bring that on?
Specifically, hating people
Mm.
for their differences. I have family members who have said racist things, family members who have said homophobic things. And I'm just like, okay, no, that's none of that you just said was true. That's just your feelings, how you're raised coming through. That's all it is. And
Mm.
that breaks me.
So on an individual level, when there's a line, right, where we feel called to stay quiet, to be considerate, and then likewise, and I'm going to say, air quotes on considerate, because some people have different views on what it means to be considerate. How do you feel like the individual, especially young, potentially radicalized men, who are experiencing all kinds of things in a very turbulent society, what can they do to help them understand where that limit and that line is on inherently when it's important to be silent and obey what I would say the word of the master, meaning that predominant power in the situation, or to become the master and to stand to have your voice heard? How would you encourage, or what can we do to help find that point?
When to stay silent.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. When it's going to cause bodily harm to you, perhaps.
Are there any causes that are worth standing up in spite of that?
Definitely. Definitely, yes.
How would you classify those? Or how would I as the individual find them?
I don't know. I would have to be in the moment. I would have to be there. Because I could say, speak up if unless, someone's gonna harm you for it. But then I might just do it anyway. I might act differently than I speak. Or it might be the opposite. I might say, okay, you need to speak up all the time about these injustices. But then if your nuts are in a vice, maybe I wouldn't. I don't know.
Scream and say nice.
Pineapple.
Sorry, children. Yes, this is fantastic. Pineapple. Red light. Red light.
Yes. Oh, yellow light.
Yeah, I love it. I fucking love it.
Proceed with caution.
I can tell you've been on the depths of TikTok.
Among other things.
Oh, you naughty boy. It was fantastic. So let's look at that. Let's go into I'm going to say a further aspect of, let's look at the Christian example, because that's one I feel like we can meet on a similar space with most people. It's ironic. We can start using Christian analogy and both piss a lot of people off because it's going to be so familiar that they have to understand, or that to disagree with it is deeply invocative of some personal dialogue. When we look at Christ, when you look at the example that he teaches on, to speak, inevitably he underwent, incredible austerities and incredible punishment, torture, and martyrdom, as it's written within that book, all for his word, all for his example. And he gave such interesting orders to his apostles, to those who followed him, to take nothing, ask for nothing effectively outside of a place to stay. These are crazy ass requirements. when it looks at the the example of an idealized man and the individual self, how do we rationalize a world and society which chooses us versus versus system of faith which always chooses the collective? Because you talked about just a moment ago that it's kind of you got to take the moment. Christ spoke one way and he also acted that way, again according to the book. We're not sure, but just in the analogy, he said turn the other cheek and he also turned the other cheek. He allowed those things to occur. He didn't just flip, he didn't fall into a human side. What motivations do we use and how do we rationalize when we can't make that decision, when we can't choose everybody else over us?
I don't know. I'm stumped again. That is, I don't know. To relate it back to masonry, we all have our cable toes.
Yeah.
And it's different for everybody. Some people can risk more than others.
Where do you think that comes from? Because there is a universal sense of good. And I'm going to pull from Eastern philosophy now, bounce around a little bit. I mean, technically Christianity is technically it's an East, but whatever. Well, I'm going to say a little bit further east. Looking into some of those places where there is a collective good. There is a unified, defined form that there is, this is almost like a monotheistic approach. It is to say to value others over yourself, not over yourself, let me clarify. But inherently, the collective good is always greater than the individual, or the individual's choice.
I have a few friends who would argue with you.
Well, let's talk. I mean, where does the main argument point for collective over individual?
I don't know. One friend in particular of mine, he calls himself a anarchist.
I like that term.
He believes we should demolish government as a whole. He's one of those, and that the individual is more important than the collective.
I mean, I'm familiar with the particular teaching. I studied LaVeyan Satanism for a bit, and it's a very similar running thing. Is like you're at the center, your experience, your pleasure, whatever is highest. What do you think when it comes to individual experience or collective experience?
I believe it is very much a balancing act. I don't think you should go to one extreme or the other. I don't think you should sacrifice everything about yourself for the good of the whole, but then you don't want to be selfish either.
I like that. I mean, it's fair enough to say that within the body, there's specification for good reason. Within nature, we have systems and cycles which are all supported by diversity and unique diversity, not a bug that can do everything, not a virus that is unendable, unstoppable, unconquerable. Everything is bound in balance. So how do we find that balance? And a lot of people say, and everybody has different approaches, but for you, how do you get to that balance of understanding collective good versus yours?
Again, I think it all comes back to communication and empathy. I mean, that's the crux of it, isn't it? I mean, because if you're selfish and you think that your way is 100% the right way, and this other person, well, they're doing it wrong, and I must correct them. If you had a little more empathy and you understood where they were coming from, maybe you wouldn't.
All right, so let's go deeper. What about when it's you? There's different parts of you. There's different, there's the physical, the flesh, there's the mind, the rational, and the emotion. There are all of these different parts, any numbers of bodies by different faiths that drive you to be you. When you have difference within yourself with what you feel versus what you want versus what you know, how do you find neutrality, or how do you start that communication?
Just start with some good old self-reflection and meditation.
How do you meditate?
I just I sit and I try to block everything else out. And I can't really do the full-on, I'm going to go into a dark room and I'm going to have candles and it's going to be I just try to do it on a micro level. Just take a minute if I have some time, just breathe and ground myself and wait a few moments and then go back to my life.
And then run back into the madness that is the Matrix.
Yes. I have to do that sometimes between clients at work. I'll have someone come in and it'll be a depressing hour.
Mm-hmm.
They will talk about all this abuse and trauma they have. And before I get the next person, I have to flush that for a minute. I have to sit down and concentrate and get rid of it because I can't bring that baggage into another
The next
session.
client, yeah. That's, I mean, God, you want to talk about a shadow worker. You want to talk about somebody who takes a lot of personal toll. So this is just me talking and shooting the shit. Make sure you are regularly, and let's ask about how you're regularly. How do you take care of yourself on a psychic, on an emotional, on a mental level, a psyche level? When we talk about the incredible shadow work, shadow workers are inherently people who are willing to go into the emotional war zone that is somebody's mind and start listening. Not trying to change shit. That would be easy. Not trying to manipulate. That would be easy. You were just trying to listen and to hear and to create this safety. But that puts a unique personal toll on you, being that ear, being that voice, to connect understanding, consciousness, and change into the unconscious, the dreaming, and the traumatic. How do you do that? How do you heal and recover from that? I mean, you've been doing this now for quite some time, and you have goals to continue doing that as a master's degree focus. And how do you do it?
Compartmentalize. And I mean, using positive coping skills, throwing the lingo out there.
Not Coke.
No, not Coke. I think that would have the opposite effect.
Fair. Fair.
Just raise my anxiety through the roof.
Oh my God.
Just, yeah, compartmentalize. Keep everything separate to where it doesn't affect you. Well, I mean, it's inevitably, it's going to affect you in some way. Mm-hmm. You can't escape that. But reduce the effects, reduce the harm.
How do I do that? How do I draw that line? I care so much. I hear my friend telling me this story about this relationship that went very wrong. And I really care. I care enough that I feel slightly compelled, maybe possibly, to say something that maybe I shouldn't say. Maybe I want to start towing that line a little bit. How do I?
You have to understand that you cannot make decisions for them. You have to understand that the ball is in their court, not yours. You can listen, you can offer advice, but they have to want to change themselves. It's like the old jokes, how many therapists does it take to change a light bulb? Well, the light bulb has to want to change itself.
Oh God, I know you're a dad now. That was your dad dues card. That was fantastic. All right, so I'm gonna run with that one. Okay, so what happens when, again, it's me, when it's these different parts of me who don't want to change? I'm still smoking a cigarette. I'm still 4 bowls in. I'm still 8 shots back. It doesn't matter that I have a high logic. I understand it. The dipshit driving the vehicle still drinking. How do I accept? How do I go through what you just described with myself?
Sometimes you can't. Sometimes your base self overcomes the logic. It happens. I mean, it happens with me. I mean, I have struggled with depression, anxiety, using negative coping skills. I have, and sometimes I can overcome it. Sometimes I slip right back in.
How do you
it's
heal
important
your traumatized intellectual side that watched you fail, watched you burn?
Like, I have the knowledge to take care of myself. Do I always use it? No. So you have to understand that you are still human. You are not perfect. You are going to make mistakes, but you cannot let those defeat you.
Is that what it means to be human? That we will fail, that we will make mistakes.
Fighting. Always keep fighting.
Who are we fighting?
Yourself.
Good answer.
Yourself, man.
It got me all emotional.
You are fighting against that other side of yourself that you mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm. Why do you feel like we are personally in confliction with ourselves? Inherently, I'm me, right? I am you, or not you. I am the different bodies. I'm the whole house which they're sitting in, at least on one level, because I can perceive them. That may not be the factual evidence in the end when that trigger gets pulled, but why are they fighting? Shouldn't there just be one reasonable, shouldn't there just be one motherfucker driving the steering wheel?
I think it's the nature of the brain. Um, if you want to look at Freud, you know, the id, the superego, the ego, we are animals.
Mm-hmm.
There is a base desire, like just to eat and have sex and think for ourselves and fend for ourselves. It's all animal.
Mm-hmm.
And in our polite society, you got to make compromises with that self.
Yeah.
You can't completely overcome the animal instincts and your emotional brain. You can't. You have to find compromises.
That's, I mean, and unfortunately, that's validated by our collective's, damn sum of, philosophy or study of the mind. They definitely affirm that. Why can't I accept it?
I don't know, man.
He's like, God,
Because
quit with the fucking questions.
Well, I mean, same reason you probably enjoy Freemasonry, right? It's self-improvement. It's trying to build yourself better.
Ooh, I like that. We're all flawed perfectionists, and if we would ever arrive at the goal by which we perceive, then it would be done, and that would create it.
I like how the haters like to say, "Oh, you think you're better than everybody." No, we don't. We're just trying, man. We're just trying to do better. We're not saying we are better. We're saying we're trying to do better.
Well said. Yeah, I know a lot of people are like, well, then why do we don't do shit. Like, have you seen, I mean, you been to church? You've been to church? It's a house of God. How many people in there look like God, act like God, be like God? Just real quick question. No, none? Certainly the dude up on stage with the big old light on him, but that's certainly while the light's on him. Now, before poor guy, he's probably like actually sweating under a tinfoil hat.
Actually, no, I haven't even noticed it.
Nice and refreshing. That's the benefit of the 5G resistance technology.
Had to plug up my phone there before it dies. I'm sure it's low.
Yeah, no worries. I realize we're kind of running up on that mark. Well, so let's do this. Let's look at it like, I'll cease with my questions, and I will turn one to thank you so much for coming on the show with us, for answering all of my very, very ridiculous questions, for joining me in not only theory, but beautiful fraternal conversation. I'm incredibly appreciative of that. What can we do to highlight you? How would you like to send our viewers off today?
Oh man. Dr. Phil, final thoughts kind of thing.
Dr. Phil, final thoughts.
Love and understand each other. If you do not understand somebody, if you have hate in your heart for any group, try to learn about them more. Like, okay, if you hate a certain religion, you think that they're all bad or they're all terrorists or something, read their books. Learn from them. See that they are not a monolith.
I'm gonna build on that because because I think that's exactly it. If they're your enemies so much, if you really have so much animosity, learn their secrets, get into them, get into their churches, get into their house, get into their space, love them, understand what makes them move. Why do they move that way? Why do they view it like that? Learn, educate yourself, fools. We ain't about no ignorant thought. Nope, that's not how we do it. So, with that, Blair, brother, I'm gonna go ahead and end this recording. We're gonna take it off. I bless you. Bless you for your time. Thank you for spending it with us. This is going to be, make sure you check out Psychonautic Gnostic over on the TikToks if you want something educational, entertaining, and best of all,